Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Atchison. I'm the convener of UBE's Talk2Talk, and we're talking now monthly programs. We welcome one and all to this afternoon's presentation of Young Fathers on Faith and Family. Please allow me to share a few logistical norms that will govern our time together. Unless you are one of the panelists or otherwise instructed, we'll ask all attendees to please put your devices on mute. As our presentation unfolds, please add your questions and comments to the chat box. In this way, we'll be sure to capture and respond to them by the end of the program. This event is being recorded and will be available later on UBE's YouTube page and website. As is our custom, let us begin our time together with prayer. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for bringing us together this afternoon to learn and to be inspired by images of Black fatherhood, Black masculinity, and Black parenting for a new generation. As we begin our meeting, we declare that your purposes will prevail. Help us to be one in spirit and of one mind. Help us to live according to your word. As we work together to fulfill your purpose, we commit to walk in grace, humility, and truth. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So I'll begin by introducing our panelists. Our first is a familiar face, Casey Jones. Casey is a rising second year at Virginia Theological Seminary from the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles. At VTS, Casey serves as president of the Justice and Reconciliation Society, which forms students through and for ministries of social justice and reconciliation. Prior to studying at VTS, Casey worked as a case manager for houseless and housing insecure folks in West Los Angeles. Casey previously served as vice president of the H. Belfield Hannibal chapter of UBE, as well as on the national board as the Young Adult Representative and chair of the Young Adult, Youth, and Children Committee. Casey is married to Amani Thompson. Amani and Casey recently welcomed their baby girl, Amara. They also share their home with a feisty old Boston Terrier named Bray. And Michael Tyree is my friend from Yale Divinity School. We realized we've been away from there for 10 whole years. He was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. He is now a community organizer and social entrepreneur in Dayton Beach. Previously, he served as the state coordinator for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul's Reentry Project. Through the project, he was part of the national delegation that traveled to the White House to meet with individuals from the Obama administration concerning Ban the Box. Tyree is a 2014 graduate of Yale University, where he earned a Master of Religion degree at the Divinity School. Prior to Yale, Michael earned his bachelor's degree from Bethune-Cookman University, where he studied philosophy. He's married to Shanika Tyree, a teacher at Westside Elementary, and they are parents to Jordan, Imani, Mila, and MJ. And you can tell me if I pronounce those names right. So before we start our discussion, we had a short clip that I wanted to show you about the Dad Gang. So Robbie's going to help with that.
Celebrated, he decided he was going to do something about it. We are going to talk to Sean in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at his story.
My name is Sean Williams. I am a dad of 3, and I'm the founder of the Dad Gang. The Dad Gang is an organization of active Black dads on a mission to change the way the world views Black fatherhood, trying to empower as many dads as possible to stay active and be active, and just to see how incredibly fun and amazing it is to be a dad.
Sean formed the Dad Gang nearly 5 years ago after several incidents where strangers appeared surprised to discover that he was an attentive father.
It's incredibly frustrating to even have to defy a stereotype, to have someone compliment me for sticking around. It's very frustrating, where you start to realize that you're only getting the compliment because the sight of you as an active dad is a shocker to people. And it's very sad.
The Dad Gang celebrates and encourages other Black dads by offering parenting resources, hosting their trademark Strollin' with the Homies events, and sharing positive images of Black fatherhood on social media.
In climates like these, where, you know, people or a cop might see a guy and he might be racially profiled, they're not thinking about his family. They're not thinking about who this guy is to his family, to his children. So I think the Dad Gang and what we do, and other dads showing how active they are, it ties us directly to who's important to us. And and what we stand for our families and our community.
And lucky us, Sean is with us now from his home on Long Island. Hey, Sean, good morning.
Good morning. How are you both?
So, Sean, you started the Dad Gang about 5 years ago, and how has your mission evolved as time has gone on?
Oh man, it's been an incredible journey so far. When we started, you know, the mission is to change the way the world views Black fatherhood, but the amount of support that we've received ever since starting from our community, from all communities, really has just been an incredible journey.
And I can only imagine over the last couple weeks, it's just been heightened. I'm sure you have more people kind of knocking on your door, just given what we've been seeing on the streets lately.
Absolutely, absolutely. With the climate change, it being such another dark tone in our nation's history, we get a lot more submissions to share images and share stories of just how you know, my fellow dads are dealing with what's going on right now. So it's I think the outpour is a lot, and it's a lot of pressure on us to, you know, continue to pump out the content, whether it's uplifting, and also what's happening currently in our homes, having these conversations, and just how we're dealing with what's going on.
Well, you know what, Sean, I think sometimes you don't know how many people you're impacting. You don't have any idea of seeing that. So we are just going to give you a teeny little glimpse. Dad Gang, are you here?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Is Anthony in there?
Wow.
Oh, that's a, by the way, that's a beautiful image. Beautiful.
Okay.
That's incredible.
Like to hear.
Oh my God.
Anthony, where's Anthony?
Anthony, are you out there?
Oh, there's Anthony. Okay, Anthony, tell us how Sean starting the Dad Gang has helped you in fathering.
The Dad Gang made me feel like it's a community that I was a part of, and it just made me feel so much significant as just a father, and just changing the narrative the way the world sees us as Black men and as dads.
Look at Sean. Look at Sean changing the world there. Look at Sean. Where is
This is incredible.
Where's Luke? Is Luke there? Let me see.
Wow. Oh man, my nephew. It's my nephew.
Luke, you got a message for Sean?
Yes, Sean, bro, man, you have inspired me through the Dad Gang movement to feel as if I'm an ambassador of the Dad Gang, to use my platform and just, you know, be more influential in your nephew's life, your nieces, and also my nieces and nephew's lives. And I'm proud of you, bro, and I'm glad to be a part of this journey with your sister and you being my brother.
That's awesome.
Oh, I love you, bro. Wow.
Okay.
This is incredible.
So, Sean, as you can tell, Sean, you are loved, you are loved, you are loved, but also we want to celebrate you because we heard that you are in the process of becoming officially recognized as a nonprofit. Is that right?
Yes, we are in the process, yes.
Okay, well, once you are, Bye Bye Baby, the sister brand of Bed Bath & Beyond, they heard about all the incredible work that you're doing, and they wanted to help. When Dad Gang becomes an official non-for-profit, they're going to donate $10,000
Wow.
and accessories to the Dad Gang.
Wow, that is amazing.
They love what you're doing. It's part of their Bringing Home Everywhere program, which is supporting Black communities.
Well, by the
Oh, my
way,
gosh.
Sean, hats off to you and hats off to the Dad Gang. That's a beautiful image. You're doing a lot of great work. Guys, happy Father's Day to all the dads on that screen. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
we
you,
love
guys. Thank you,
Thank
Sean.
you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Robbie. So I wanted to start by asking you how your lives have changed or how you have changed while, you know, after becoming a father. So Casey, you can go first. And then.
Yeah, so my change is recent and abrupt and sharp. I think it changes a lot. Just the, you know, I think the physical demands, it becomes a very like thin space spiritually, because you're tired and you're in the trenches, you know, and we're blessed to have a lot of support. But in the moments where it's just me and Amani and Amara, you know, we're all figuring it out together, learning from each other, and so there's so much transformation that happens in that, like, in that space, where you're just trying to figure things out, and you know, everything is new again, and the opportunity to see kind of the world's unraveling in front of Amar's eyes, is, you know, this is amazing. And then there's also all the ways that you appreciate. I've continued to appreciate the things that my parents imparted into me, that some of them I didn't know stuck the way that they did. Some of them, you know, I never imagined how they would come back into the way I would approach parenthood. And then also just recognizing how different I want to approach those things. And so in all the ways that I've learned to be a parent from my parents, there's also all the ways that I'm coming to it as myself, and so that mix of things, I think, that mix of learning about myself and about Amara and about and her teaching, you know, us how to be parents, all kind of contribute to this moment of change for me.
Great, thank you.
Man, I think that was a really good answer, actually. So I think for me, I can agree with everything that Brother Casey mentioned, but also I think having kids slowed me down a little bit, right? And so like there isn't sort of just this, idea and then take action. It's idea, think about how this is going to affect your family, and maybe or talk to your wife about it, or then maybe or maybe not, take action. And so I think my kids also bought the hustle out of me. I like to say, but I think like the biggest change for me is that I've become a lot more reflective, and thoughtful on how the things that I do and say, will impact these, humans' childhood that I'm going to play a big part in. And I think that, as a parent, it's like your purpose sort of changes, right? Like, once before kids, you just wanted to save the world, right? And after kids, it was, I want to make sure my kids have everything that they need to be the person that God called them to be. And so it's almost as if like there's I don't know if I want to say shift or I don't know, and in addition to your sort of purpose, what you feel like your purpose is. And I think, for me, that's a good thing. So yeah, that's how my life has changed.
Great. I think when I started trying to come up with this as a topic, what I heard the most were like the pain people were feeling about the negative ideas about Black masculinity and Black fatherhood. So I wanted to know if any of that the young man talked about in the video, has that impacted you at all? How does it reach you? How do you resist it? That kind of thing. So we'll start with you, Michael, this time.
Yeah, so I have not had any sort of explicit negative experiences, that I can recall. But I think that it's always this sort of mental thing that we have to overcome, the stereotype that, Black fathers aren't in their children's lives, because all of my male friends, all of them are in their children's lives, even if they're not with the child's, mom. Um, and I have individuals from all walks of life, from, somebody who is, an attorney in politics, or all the way, over to, somebody who's a street pharmacist, we'll call them. All of these individuals have sort of this rigorous commitment to being in their children's lives. And I think that I don't think that we talk enough about that in particular. So I haven't had any explicit, for me, I think it's just this idea of overcoming, the stereotype, and I'm sure Casey will experience this, when when my wife walks in the grocery store with all of our kids. We have 4 kids. When she walks through the grocery store with all of our kids, it's just another day. But when I walk through the grocery store with all of our kids, I mean, I'm getting a standing ovation from the entire grocery store. Everybody wants to clap for me. I mean, I feel famous. And I appreciate the love. But a part of me thinks, like, where does this come from? Like, is this, am I getting this love because I'm not, you feel like I'm not supposed to be doing this, right? Because my wife, she's out here doing this, she doesn't get the same love that I get when she, puts in a lot more work, than I do. So I think the overcoming the stereotype for me is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think definitely resonates. I wear sometimes I wear a Mara. I have a little harness. Looks like a little book bag you put on the front, and it is fascinating how folks are like strangers are shouting me down in the mall because I'm carrying my child, minding my business, and so definitely that resonates. I think I think I'm married to somebody doing a PhD in feminist studies and women and gender studies, and has been fiercely committed to the experiences of Black women and girls in her work, in her life, in her, that's who she is. And part of me coming alongside her and falling in love with her and trying to show up as the person. I love the way that Michael said, doing what needs to do and having making sure that his kids have the things that they need in order to show up as the people that God has called them to be. And so, part of my journey with showing up as the person that God has called me to be and showing up as the person that my relationship with God and my relationship with my wife demands has been kind of unlearning a lot of things, trying to recognize a lot of, again, that mix of like, fathering myself. I think, there's a lot of literature about kind of what it looks like. I think Alexis Pauline Gumbs talks about self-mothering, and so part of my journey has been, what does it mean to kind of teach myself and forgive myself and care for myself, so that I can show up as the person that I need to be. And so I think that there's that. So I think that there's that is something that is a commitment in our home before we even had kids before. There was a point at which I was like, I don't even know if Amani's gonna have children, and I'm gonna just be okay with that. And so, but even before that, that was our commitment, and so I had to do that work. And so, it, in terms of hurt, it hasn't hurt me, or in so much, uh, but it is a constant reminder of who, you know, we say that we are, and in the work that we need to do to be those people in the world.
I think this next question goes along those lines, but it's about any early messages that you received about Black fatherhood or Black masculinity that you feel you had to unlearn in order to become a parent. And especially because you're both parents of daughters, are there anything specifically that you've had to unlearn in terms of all that? So we'll start with Casey since you already kind of got us in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I was blessed. I was blessed. My dad was involved in our lives, um, and I have a deep amount of respect and love for him. He passed away in 2018. And so, so I miss him a lot. Part of us coming down at this time was so that we could go visit him, visit his gravesite, let Amara experience kind of that pilgrimage home, and be with my family, meet everybody, but particularly on Father's Day, and at this time, and Juneteenth and all these things kind of happening all at the same time. It was important for us to get back, or it felt urgent for me to get back home. And so I was blessed. My dad was tough. He was a military guy. He was, we did not always have the greatest relationship, but I appreciated his presence. I appreciated his work ethic. I appreciated his hustle, to borrow. And that was important. And I appreciated how much he loved the community. Like he taught me a great deal about not just working hard, but that hard work creates opportunities for extraordinary generosity. And that's important. Important that, you know, you're taking care of yourself, but you're also taking care of the community. And so those were all really great lessons. But there's also a lot of lessons about being tough and about, you know, being a man in a certain way, and, you know, having to carry the burden of providing, right? Like, I think one of the things that quote unquote good fathers fall into, right, is that part of the expectation of a good father is being a good provider. And so, you know, you get folks who are not doing good, that aren't well, because they're working so hard to be what a good father is supposed to be, which is this kind of good provider. And that was the thing. My dad fell into that trope. He got to a point where he hated people complimenting him on being a good provider, because it kind of erases all the other ways that you kind of are showing up in your family and trying to be there. So I've tried to live, particularly as a dad, from a different place of being a nurturer, being a caregiver, you know, and being blessed that my choices, and the places that God has called me to vocationally create space for me to kind of show up in that way. But that's been the big thing, is prioritizing those different ways of showing up as a caregiver and as a nurturer, and to try to make that normal, and try to be soft. I'm rough. Everybody always comments how like I'm flipping Amara over and like some of the things, but I think, and there's room for that. I think there's room for me to be a caregiver and a nurturer in the way that comes natural to me, and I think that's been good.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of that, for me, I think I grew up with all boys, and I think that like sort of showing emotion was a sign of weakness and something that girls did. And so, you know, one of the statements that sort of me and my brothers and, you know, folks in my community, you know, young guys I grew up with would say a lot is, man, stop crying like a girl. Stop crying like you acting like a girl. Man, stop you acting like. So it's like, as I got older, you know, so that I had to chew on that a bit. What does that even mean? What does, you know, am I going to, you know, hold this emotion in and, you know, die early, or am I going to actually engage my emotions and, you know, figure out what this stuff means? And so I think that the thing I had to overcome the most was this idea that, you know, being conscious and aware and engaging of your emotions is somehow, uh, uh, you know, a sign of weakness or something that men aren't supposed to do. And I think also for me, it was recognizing that being a protector and a provider does not necessarily always have to do with money and, you know, beating somebody up that's trying to break in your house, right? That's like the stereotypical things that come to mind. And so so for me, I want to be, you know, a whole person to, you know, to for my wife and my kids. And, you know, that means, being showing up as my full self and not withholding for the sake of, you know, living up to some type of, you know, stereotype that came out of pop culture or something. And so, yeah, those were the two things for me that I sort of had to reckon with when I became a father.
Great. Um, so what has been the role of faith and religion in your parenting? And either one can start.
I'll go, bro. um, you know, I see the world through, you know, a Christian worldview, and a lot of what I do is interpreted through that particular worldview. And so, you know, being a father, I think about the life of Christ and how to be sort of, you know, show up as someone who is also who's gentle and also strong, right? You know, I think that it's not a burden, but you know, I have a concern with, you know, making sure my kids understand that worldview. And you know, we process our morals and values through scripture, and we attend church, and we pray, and so we do. You know, so in that regard, faith is very important to us, and you know, how we live. You know, we oftentimes find ourselves explaining why we do things, you know, from that worldview, and so sort of our kids, you know, kind of, you know, they sort of understand us, our family, in that particular aspect. So it has a major part on, you know, how I father and, you know, how I just exist as a human. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think, you know, being a Christian, being a devout Christian, I think definitely has deep impacts on my parenting. Amani and I come to you know, our relationship with God and from different places, and I think Amani has a very different relationship to the Christian church, to Christianity than I do, and so obviously I'm in seminary and you know, working towards ordination and discerning and doing all these things, and I think Amani's found spiritual home in a lot of those practices and a lot of that a lot of those ethical commitments to care that have come up in her life and work. And so there's a constant conversation about values in our house, which I think for some folks, I think they might be like, well, that sense of not being perfectly aligned all the time would be something that generates a lot of anxiety and even you know, a lot of tension. For us, I think it's created intentional space for conversation, and for us to constantly be evaluating whether or not what we're doing, what we are hearing God call us to, you know, who we are in community with, is in line with our shared values, and what does it mean to identify those shared values, and what is the world that we feel like we are working towards as a family. And so those are, I think, in terms of like the overarching parenting kind of like paradigm for us, is like this constant question and relationship between those kind of ethical commitments that come to us from like Black feminist thought and our ancestors, and what comes to us through Christianity, and our other set of ancestors, and another set of you know, commitments, and I think what we found is that those things are, at least the way that we've come to interpret them, and the way the Spirit has led us to interpret those things, that they're almost never in conflict with each other, but that realizing the just future and the just world that Amani feels called to is hand in hand with the just future and the kingdom of God that I feel called to create, and so, or to partner with God in creating. So I think that's the overarching things, but there's also just the small ways that we weave faith into day-to-day things. We sing hymns a lot. I've tried to, and it's been a short period of time, so I've been pretty consistent with it so far. We'll see how it goes. But instead of doing like nursery rhymes, we've done hymns and tried to learn a hymn each season in the liturgical year. And her first one was Great Is Thy Faithfulness, which I know is questionable, but she loves it, and oftentimes find myself going back to that one because the new one isn't settling her down in the right way. We've done Blessed Assurance, and we've done most recently we did what is that? We were going to try to do In the Garden, but that one was way too many words. And then we settled on Pass Me Not. That's what. So that's the one we've been working on lately. And I think that, you know, it's a thing. I think she goes to Episcopal church with me. I'm gonna be doing some my contextual ministry at a Black church in DC, St. George's And so that's nice. So she'll hear some of these songs in our worship. But that's when sometimes, like for instance, in Columbus, the church that we go to, it's predominantly white, and they, you know, sing out of the 1982 hymnal, and they, but also do like, you know, show tunes. They did some Broadway stuff, it's like last Sunday, and it's different. And so connecting her in that way, I think is important. So that's all.
All right, so my final question was just in general, what kinds of support do Black fathers need from the community?
I would say, I think a given is you know, support from my partners, you know, certainly, and family. But I think a big one is, what makes a big difference for me is when when fathers support fathers, um, you know, and encourage new fathers. I really love meeting new fathers. I really enjoy that because I remember you know, the uncertainty that I personally, you know, dealt with when I became a father or was becoming a father. And so I really, you know, I was really blessed to have, you know, some people in my church around me who kind of took me under their wing and was like, you know, this is some tricks that I use. This is what some, you know, just share some wisdom and encouragement. So I think support from other fathers. That's why I really enjoyed the video that you guys played before we started, because it just shows this, you know, just sort of this network of brothers that are willing to encourage each other and be there for each other. It feels a lot better, you know, when you have someone, you know, who understand, who can empathize with what you're going through, or what you're thinking, you know, standing beside you. So I think support from other fathers is a big one for me.
Ditto. I think you said it. I think being in community with other fathers and being and having that support is crucial. I think the only thing I'll add is just, I think in particular for Black men, and I think after you start getting older, it gets, and this might be true for just humans in general, but I've experienced it as a Black man. I've experienced it maintaining like friendships and like that type of relationship and that type of community. It gets harder and harder and harder. And I think that was true for me before Mara. But I think, you know, I've recognized how busy I've gotten now that she's here. And even when Amani was pregnant, and just making different choices and different types of moves, that like, especially if you don't have, like, seminaries helped, being in that space right now has helped. But when you're outside of those spaces, it's hard to maintain those relationships and those friendships. So finding intentional spaces that are bringing folks together, it's super important, I think.
All right, so our first question from the chat says, what do our speakers feel are the most important lessons we can teach our children? So the most important lessons.
You know, I don't have to think about that one, but I don't know if this is the most important lesson, but this is, you know, a big one for me is, I don't know, you know, more than a lot of things, I just really want my kids to be kind humans, right? Like I want them to be like, I want them to show people grace, you know? And so my wife is a teacher, and, you know, academics is really important to her. And, you know, the new math and stuff like that. And, you know, they're talking all this stuff. And I just be like, are you being kind to your teacher? Are you being kind to your friends? Like, you know, this math stuff will, you know, we'll figure this out later. But like, you know, like how are your friends? Like, tell me about, like, And so I want them to have sort of, I want them to show people grace and not be too quick to sort of conclude on somebody based on, something that they do. I want them to have empathy. And so I just want them to be kind humans. Because kind humans, you know, they can make your day really well, even if you're having a bad one. So I want my kids to do that. That's a big one for me. I don't know if it's the big one, but that's a big one for me.
That's real. Me, Amani and I use that exact expression. We just want to be a kind human being. Like, we can do that, then that's like, great. Yeah, I mean, I think that is, but I think practically one of the things I've recognized is, I saw this with my niece, like, she loves her phone. She has this like phone, it's not even connected, it's just like Wi-Fi, and she knows how to navigate it, she does all the things. And it's super important. And everybody talks about like kind of, digital natives, and like when are we gonna, like at what point do you introduce like them to technology? And one of the things I recognize is that it kind of comes at a cost of like learning how to engage with other human beings in a particular way. And not in a bad way. My niece is social and she's great. Love her to death. And she can have conversation, but when she gets into the phone, she's like distracted, and sometimes she's like not reading social cues or not aware of what's going on around her. And so I think to add, like, I think being a kind person, and knowing that, baptism is a big thing, right? And so Amara hasn't been baptized yet. We're planning on getting her baptized in All Saints, during All Saints. For me, that means part that you belong to a community, that that these folks are here to support you, and that we're asking God to order your steps, right? On the other side of that, is, for at least for Episcopalians, is going to be confirmation, where she makes a deliberate choice to say that, like, I'm dedicating my life to God, and this is going to be my Christian profession and my public faith. And so I constantly saying all that, my constant thing is that in none of that, you don't belong to me. Like, you are your own person. You have your own thing that you're gonna have to figure out, what you're being called to. And I can impart values and I can teach you all these things. But if I can help you show up and be a kind person, and to be a discerning person and a thoughtful person, so that you can, find your way and figure out what that means, right? Again, going back to that point that Michael made earlier about, giving them what they need to be the person, show up as the person that God has called them to be, that's awesome. But beyond that, practically, I do worry about, making sure that she's able to engage in community in a particular way, and that she knows how to be in community. Because I think growing up, I took for granted that kids just kind of learn by osmosis how to engage with like each other, and how to engage with adults, and how to like be. And I realize now that, like, watching other kids and thinking about how we're going to teach these lessons to Amara, like that doesn't just happen.
Right. So the other comment in the chat is, a lot of interest is unfolding about teaching race and the fullness of Black history in our educational institutions. What role do you see Black fathers playing in response to attempts to erase Black advancement out of the national story?
give that one to the organizer.
For me, I guess some of the examples I think of is in Florida. The curriculum changes with sort of eliminating AP African American studies and things of that nature happening, and a lot of items that are labeled as woke, in the political space, sort of being, eliminated in the classroom as well. Honestly, I'm not looking towards the school system to teach my kids about themselves. That's my responsibility, right? If because I didn't learn about. My mom taught me about who we are, and so I'm not looking to the school system to tell my kids that they have value. I think that's my job. That's my family's job. And, the things that I can control through organizing and letting my voice be heard in the public space, I will do that. But, I'm hopeful in the school system and stuff like that, but I'm cautiously hopeful. For me, I think it's about making sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, so that my kids can learn about who they are, where they come from, and how valuable, they are. That's most important for me. I'm not looking towards the school system.
Agree with everything. I do think, I wonder about like the dad gang, and I follow an influencer named Belief in Fatherhood, and like people like Kiera Gaines, and like, all these folks who have like a tremendous amount of influence. And I think they sometimes make comments. I think about the dad gang in particular as this like, network of voices, right? Like, and I don't do, I follow them because of the kind of reassurance and affirmation that gives. But I wonder, if they're doing what they're doing, how they're thinking about these things, if there's more that we can do as we participate in these networks. Are there calls that we can make? As but I also think about the work that places like Freedom Schools, I think, and different community projects, kind of the impacts that they make on creating space to teach our kids who they are. Because I think there's that one part which is like, what are we teaching as a dad, to our children, but also what are we teaching as a dad to in the community? And I think so. Those, I think, are I do wonder about, are there ways that we could, utilize the spaces, these spaces better? Because suburban white moms have no issue organizing themselves to be at the school board meeting and to shut it down. If their voices aren't challenged, or if we just kind of sit back and say that's a shame, then we get what we get.
Indeed. So I have one more short video that I want to show that Robbie will help us with, and then we will take final questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Every day I tell my kids I love them, and one day they ask me why. Without hesitation, my body shot my heart through vocal cords, aiming for their souls. As I told them how much they meant to me, almost instantly, I froze. No metaphors or similes, no analogies or melodies, I just froze. I realized I wasn't sure if they were asking why I love them or why I tell them. How often do we say what we want others to hear without understanding their question? I questioned if they understood my answers, not the ones with words, but the ones that can only be felt. The answers that were spoken when she ran into my arms as fast as the tears ran off of her face when a boy called her ugly. The times my son's eyes gazed the audience and looked for confidence in my presence and found peace in my smile because he knew that I believed in him, even when he did not believe in himself. This love cannot be expressed only in words, it must be shown. So when they watch TV and only see good dads that don't look like me, they know it's not because we don't exist. It's just taking much longer than expected to recognize us.
Right, so I will allow each of you, if you have a final thought, tell us your final thoughts, and then we will close.
Thank you for organizing this and having this conversation. I really appreciate the invite, and this is an important dialogue. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ditto. I appreciated this. I appreciated meeting Michael. That was,
Mhm.
so thank you for bringing us together, and doing what you do. And it's great to be of service to the union. Once again, I love the community, and this community has supported me in becoming the man and the father that I am, and so I'm deeply humbled and appreciative of the opportunity to show up and share what I can. So.
No, I guess what's called kismet, where I invited the two of you, and it turns out like one dad is like the dad of four who has advice for a dad that's new, and so I'm glad that whatever it is that brings us together brought us together today. I also wanted to acknowledge and thank the past and present leadership of UBE for attending today. We celebrate you as faithful pioneers and supporters of this organization. You have made and are making UBE what it is today. I want you to thank everyone for attending. And just to say, let us go in peace and love to serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. Right.
Good to go.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.